Do you remember when Canada felt slower, softer, and somehow warmer, even in the dead of winter? When a single dinner out could light up your whole week? When stepping into a restaurant felt like stepping into a moment, one that smelled like fresh bread, sounded like clinking dishes, and wrapped around you like a familiar blanket? There was a time when the places we ate weren't just restaurants. They were meeting spots, traditions, rituals, and tiny pieces of who we were. And today we're going back to those places. Back to the booths where our mittens dried on heaters. Back to the menus we could recite by heart. Back to the Canada that lived in the glow of stained glass lamps and cafeteria trays. Before we continue, tell me in the comments what restaurant from your childhood still visits you in your memories. And if you want more journeys into the Canada we grew up in, make sure to subscribe so these moments never fade away. There's something almost dreamlike about remembering Mother's Pizza Parlor and Spaghetti House. You didn't just enter the building, you entered a world tinted with amber light from those stained glass lamps. A world where red and white checkered tablecloths sat under mugs so frosty they left your fingertips tingling. People didn't go to Mother's for speed. They went for comfort, for warmth, for the feeling that no matter what was happening outside snowstorms, school stress, long work weeks inside Mother's, everything slowed to the pace of family. Kids slid into deep vinyl booths while parents ordered pitchers of pop. Hockey teams marched in smelling like ice from the arena. Birthdays turned into long evenings where garlic bread came in towers and the house pizza tasted exactly the same in every town. That consistency was its own kind of magic. It didn't matter if you were in Hamilton or Sarnia or St. Catharines, you knew the menu, the smell, the warmth. It was a piece of home disguised as a restaurant. Then there was Lick's Homeburgers and Ice Cream, a place that didn't just break the rules, it invented its own. Thick Homeburgers slapped onto the grill with the kind of force that made you grin. Staff singing loud enough that the whole block knew someone was ordering onion rings. Milkshakes so thick the straw stood straight up. Lick's wasn't tidy, it wasn't quiet, it wasn't predictable. And that was the charm. You felt alive inside those walls. You felt part of something, like you were stepping into a secret club of people who liked their food messy, their service loud, and their burgers unforgettable. There was nothing pretentious about it, just joy, pure, unapologetic joy. And maybe you remember standing there as a kid, clutching your order slip, laughing at the singing voices behind the counter, feeling like the world was exactly as it should be. And if you grew up anywhere near the Eaton Center, the moment you rode those escalators, you knew where you were heading next, Mr. Green Jeans. You'd see the neon glow from across the mall, and your heart just lifted. Because Mr. Green Jeans wasn't a restaurant. It was an event. Hubcap nachos so big they took two hands to carry. Sundaes stacked so high they leaned like they might topple. A menu designed to make kids happy and parents surrender with a smile. It was where you celebrated a new pair of shoes, or where you went after a movie, or after skating at Nathan Phillips Square when your cheeks were still red from the cold. For 3 decades, Mr. Green Jeans lived in the background of countless childhoods. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't modern, it was simply right. The right place at the right time in the right country. And when it closed, it felt like losing a piece of the mall itself, a piece of downtown Toronto's heart. Further down King Street, theater crowds knew exactly where to go before the curtain rose Ed's Warehouse. Heavy cutlery, mashed potatoes served beside Yorkshire pudding, chandeliers glowing softly over plates so consistent you could predict every bite. Ed's wasn't about surprise, it was about stability. You could walk in year after year, decade after decade, and nothing ever changed. And that's what made it special. The ritual, the certainty. In a world that kept reinventing itself, Ed's stood still. It was a safe place to land, a place where families sat together before a show, where special nights began with plates of roast beef so generous the knife sank in like butter. And when the world outside changed faster, louder, trendier, the slow, steady magic of Ed's couldn't keep up. But if you ever ate there, even once, you remember the feeling. That sense of being part of something classy, timeless, and purely Canadian. Out west, another memory lives in the hearts of families, the rustic comfort of Mother Tucker's food experience. A place that felt like a roadhouse mixed with a ski lodge, warm wood everywhere, Soft lights hovering over salad bars and carving stations that stretched like highways of comfort food. It was the golden age of buffets, when the idea of all you can eat felt like freedom. You could stack your plate without shame. Go back for seconds, thirds, maybe grab a dinner roll on the way. Nobody judged you. Families came after long days, after school, after church. Hockey teams filled tables. Kids argued at the dessert station. It was loud, alive, full of clattering plates and laughter bouncing off the walls. And in those moments, looking down at your plate piled high, you felt that simple, forgotten happiness, the kind that comes from being surrounded by people you love in a world that felt friendly, warm, and endlessly generous. These restaurants weren't just places to eat. They were memory keepers. They held our birthdays, our family traditions, our first dates, our after-game meals, our Saturday rituals. They captured moments we didn't realize were precious until they were gone. And each one tells a story not just about food, but about who we were and who we still are, deep inside. There was a special kind of excitement in the air whenever someone suggested going to Frank Vitteri's Pizzeria. It wasn't just about pizza, every place served pizza. But Vitteri's wasn't shy, wasn't quiet, wasn't pretending to be something it wasn't. It was bold, loud, almost theatrical. The moment you stepped inside, the bright colors hit you first walls that seemed to glow. Booths that felt like little stages where families gathered for their own private show. Kids flipped through the jukebox selections while the smell of deep dish pies drifted from the kitchen. And that pizza, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't flimsy. It arrived in heavy pans, bubbling and stretching in long strands of cheese you tried to catch before they snapped. Waiting for it was part of the ritual, part of the thrill. You learned patience inside those booths, and the reward was always worth it. And maybe you remember that feeling, the anticipation building as the server placed the pan on the table, the steam rising, the first slice lifted like unveiling a treasure. Out west, in the heart of Western Canada, you'd find the simple comfort of Woodward store restaurants and coffee shops. If you ever spent a Saturday wandering a Woodward store, you knew how special that cafeteria felt. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't trying to impress anyone. It was better than that. It was familiar, honest. You'd shop the famous food floor, grab a few groceries, wander past the bulk bins and deli counters, and then head upstairs to slide your tray along the metal rails. Something about that sound, the soft scrape of a tray against steel, still echoes in the memories of people who grew up in that era. Chicken pot pie, lemon meringue, endless cups of coffee, refilled without anyone asking if you wanted more. It was the kind of place where time moved gently, where families sat together without rushing, where you could watch the snow fall outside while your hands warmed around a simple white mug. Those cafeterias held something today's world rarely gives us: the comfort of ordinariness, the beauty of the everyday Canadian life. In Montreal, you didn't just visit the department store, you ascended into something grand when you rode the elevator up to Eaton's ninth-floor restaurant. Stepping out felt like entering another era entirely. The ceilings soared above you, the Art Deco murals stretched across the walls, and the city skyline shimmered through tall windows like a painting come to life. Even the air inside felt different, quieter, more elegant, like every sound softened itself out of respect for the room. It was a place where school field trips felt like royal tours, where prom lunches felt impossibly grown up, where families celebrated moments they didn't yet know they would cherish forever. People didn't just go there for a meal, they went to feel special, to be part of something bigger than a plate of food. And even decades later, those memories glow in people's minds like the last warm light of a sunset. Back in Toronto, breakfast lovers had their own sacred spot, Golden Griddle family restaurants. If you walked in on a snowy weekend morning, you'd hear the soft squeak of red vinyl benches, the scrape of cutlery, the sizzle from the back grill, pancakes stacked high, toast so warm it melted butter instantly, bottomless coffee that never seemed to run out. It was the perfect place to gather on a Sunday morning, still wearing winter coats, kids trading sausages for extra pancakes, while newspapers lay spread across the table. You didn't need an occasion. You didn't need a reservation. Golden Griddle was the kind of place you simply showed up to, where the staff knew what the usual meant, where you could thaw your hands near the heater while waiting for your meal. It was the breakfast era before avocado toast, before latte art, before everything became curated and photographed. Just real food, real warmth, real Canada. And then there was Ben's Deluxe Delicatessen, the late-night heartbeat of Montreal, a place that stayed open when the rest of the city slept, glowing like a neon lighthouse for anyone hungry after midnight. Thick sandwiches stacked so high they felt like architectural feats. Smoked meat sliced right in front of you, piled onto rye bread that soaked up just enough juice to make every bite perfect. Ben's wasn't quiet. It wasn't polished. It didn't want to be. It was raw, alive, crowded, and proud. If you were there after a hockey game, you weren't alone. Players, night workers, locals, tourists, students, everyone drifted into that same warm glow. The booths were worn smooth by decades of elbows and laughter. The counters held stories you'd never fully hear. Even the neon sign outside felt like part of the city's soul. And if you ever sat there at 1 in the morning, surrounded by strangers who somehow felt like neighbors, you remember the feeling, a sense that the city loved you back. All across Canada, these places shaped us in ways we never noticed at the time. They were backdrops to our childhood routines, anchors in our teen years, comfort zones in adulthood. They taught us what a family table felt like, what community felt like, what growing up in this country felt like. You could walk into any of them and feel something settle inside you, a softness, a warmth, a memory waiting to happen. And as each one disappeared, a tiny piece of Canada changed with it. Not just in the physical landscape, but in us, in the quiet corners of our minds where we store the moments that built who we are. Maybe you remember the clatter of plates, the smell of grilled onions, the glow of a hanging lamp. Maybe you remember waiting for your food with frozen mittens on the heater, or sharing fries with someone you loved, or celebrating something small but unforgettable. These restaurants were more than businesses. They were the stages of our lives, and their absence is felt not because of what they served, but because of who we were when we sat inside them. These memories live on, not in buildings or menus, but in people, in you. In anyone who remembers what it felt like to walk into a place where time slowed, warmth lingered, and Canada felt just a little more like home. There's a quiet ache in remembering places that once felt unshakable. Restaurants that didn't just serve us, they raised us, shaped us, tucked themselves into the soft corners of our lives. When we look back now, these places become more than buildings. They become snapshots of who we were, reflections of a country that moved at a gentler pace. But even as doors closed and signs dimmed, something in us held on. Because memories don't close. They stay lit long after the lights go out. You might remember standing in line at Mother's Pizza Parlor and Spaghetti House, hearing the buzz of laughter before you ever stepped inside. You might remember picking the seat closest to the stained glass lamp, just so you could watch the colors dance across your plate. Or maybe the memory is simpler, the warmth of your parents sitting across from you, sharing a pitcher of pop, smiling at stories you don't quite remember anymore. It's strange how a restaurant can become a time capsule. The food fades, but the feelings stay etched inside you like a photograph that refuses to lose its color. Or maybe your memories drift back to Lick's Homeburgers and ice cream, where the singing staff became the soundtrack of your childhood meals. You might hear it even now, a voice booming from the grill, the clatter of spatulas, the laughter of strangers tied together by a moment that felt light and easy. Lick's didn't just feed people, it made them participants in the performance. And as you waited for your burger, maybe you felt that tiny spark of belonging, that sense that you were part of the fun, part of something Canadian in the messy, joyful way only Lick's could pull off. For others, the memories rise from the neon glow of Mr. Green Jeans, tucked inside the buzzing heart of the Eaton Center. You might remember wandering through the mall with frozen fingers, stepping into the restaurant and feeling the world immediately soften. Maybe you shared hubcap nachos with someone you haven't seen in years, or ordered a sundae taller than your pride. Have you ever wondered why those memories stay so vivid? It's because places like Green Jeans weren't just part of your weekend, they were part of your story. Landmarks in the emotional map of your life. And if your memories took shape in Toronto's theater district, then Ed's Warehouse may still live in your thoughts like a room preserved in amber. Heavy cutlery, thick plates, soft yellow lights. You didn't go there for adventure. You went for certainty. You went because you knew exactly what the night would feel like. The consistency became its own comfort. Something rare today when everything shifts so fast. Maybe you remember sitting near the window, watching the street lights glow on King Street, thinking the world felt civilized in a way you don't often feel anymore. Or perhaps your nostalgia belongs to Mother Tucker's food experience, where the buffet line felt endless and every plate returned to the table fuller than the last. You might remember the steam rising over the carving station, the laughter that echoed down long wooden walls, the simple joy of choosing whatever you wanted without worrying about anything except making enough room for dessert. These were moments when life felt abundant, when families gathered without schedules or screens or distractions, just food, just people, just time spent together because togetherness mattered. And then there are the Western Canadian families who remember Woodward's restaurants and coffee shops, where the scent of the food floor drifted upstairs and trays slid across metal rails with a sound so familiar you can almost hear it now. It wasn't luxury, it wasn't glamour, it was comfort, a place where coffee came hot and endless, where the rhythm of shopping days flowed naturally into warm lunches shared with the people you loved. Sometimes nostalgia isn't about the extraordinary, it's about the gentle ritual of ordinary life. And Woodward's gave that ritual a home. For Montrealers, elegance lived on the Eaton's ninth floor restaurant, where the walls carried murals and memories in equal measure. You might remember walking in and feeling instantly grown up, instantly important, instantly connected to something timeless. The room had its own soul. You didn't just eat there, you experienced it. Prom lunches, school trips, quiet afternoons with family, all held in a space that looked more like a ballroom than a dining room. And when it closed, it felt like closing the door on a generation of quiet celebrations. And then there's the warmth of mornings spent inside Golden Griddle, where the smell of pancakes and the sound of clinking cups stitched together weekends across the country. Maybe you remember sliding into a booth still cold from someone leaving, warming your hands around a cup of coffee, watching snow melt off your boots. Breakfast wasn't fancy. It wasn't curated. It was real. And there was beauty in that simplicity, a beauty many people miss more than they realize. Finally, there's the heartbeat of late-night Montreal, the legendary Ben's Deluxe Delicatessen, where neon signs glowed against the city's cold streets and plates overflowed with smoked meat stacked higher than ambition. You might remember walking in after midnight, exhausted but alive, taking that first warm bite that made the whole day feel worth it. Ben's was a refuge, a gathering place, a symbol of the city's character, a place where strangers became neighbors and meals became memories. And now when we look back at all these places, these 10 iconic restaurants that shaped the Canada we grew up in, we're not just remembering menus or buildings, we're remembering feelings. The feeling of warmth after walking in from the cold, the feeling of togetherness at a crowded table, the feeling of being young, or being with someone who made us feel young, the feeling of belonging. These restaurants remind us that Canada wasn't just a place, it was an experience, a way of life built on small comforts, shared meals, and moments that stitch themselves into our memories without us even noticing. They may be gone, but the feelings remain. And in a world that moves faster with every passing year, sometimes remembering these places slows us down just enough to touch something true inside ourselves again. If any of these memories brought a smile to your face, tell me which one touched you the most. And if you enjoyed traveling back into the Canada we grew up in, make sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe so we can keep these stories alive together for as long as they deserve to be remembered.